You keep having a dream. In the dream, you're a beloved young princess. After coming of age, you naturally became the Empress, second only to one person and above all others. At first, the Emperor treated you very well, but you forgot he was the Emperor and remained arrogant, becoming less and less favored by him each day. Worse still, you fell in love with the naval commander Feng Nanji. In the end, you implicated your family, bringing disaster to your father and brothers. You even got yourself killed. Your name is Wei Yujin. You took the college entrance exam at 16, becoming the youngest science top scorer. At 20, you graduated from a top American financial institute. By 22, you became an executive at an investment bank with an annual salary of $1 million. Your future looked bright. But today, all this beauty came to an abrupt end. On your way to work, a large truck suddenly drove toward you. You had no time to escape and were struck down on the spot. When you regained consciousness, you seemed to hear people talking outside. It's good she's dead. Why hasn't the fire started yet? 2 palace maids were outside, plotting to burn you to death and report back to their mistress. After speaking, they lit your palace with a torch. The raging fire quickly spread along the furniture and curtains surrounding you. Having just come back to life, how could you let yourself die again? At that moment, you noticed the window beside you hadn't burned down yet. You hurriedly tried to open the window to save yourself, but you discovered someone had deliberately locked it from outside. With no time to think, you charged forward with all your might. You fell into the lotus pond outside. After struggling to shore, you swore that those who harmed you would get their due revenge. The name of this body is Wei Yujin. If you could climb out of the mire in the 21st century, you can do it here too. As the palace burned fiercely, the 2 arsonist maids were fleeing. Little did they know you were already hiding in the shadows. Suddenly, they heard something stirring in the woods behind them. One maid mumbled, "I just saw a figure." Could it be the Empress's vengeful spirit? The 2 maids had just set the fire, not expecting to be haunted by a ghost seeking revenge so soon. Actually, this was all you're doing from the shadows. You needed to see what your attackers looked like. The young maid was frightened to tears. Could it really be the Empress's ghost? One maid hurried into the woods to investigate. It would be bad if someone saw us. Wan Xiang, what's wrong? What did you see? They only saw Wan Xiang crying continuously, begging for the Empress's mercy. Maid Wan Shui knew something was wrong and grabbed Wan Xiang, asking, "You mean Empress Wei? Could it be she's not dead?" But by then the fire had alerted the cold palace residents, and there was no time to worry about that. The servants searched everywhere, but couldn't find Empress Wei. Everyone felt sorry for the Empress, dying so young. Hearing this news, Wan Xiang and Wan Shui finally felt relieved. Now they could report back to their mistress. But just then, a palace maid appeared supporting you. "What? This woman isn't dead? How is that possible?" You looked at the 2 maids with a cold smile. Now you're scared? It's too late. You brought the 2 servants to the Emperor's palace. Seeing the palace named Chao Wu, you recalled through this body's memories that the Emperor and Empress were once deeply in love. This name was apparently chosen by the Empress herself. They were once so sweet together, but now he remained indifferent even when she nearly perished in the fire. The Emperor was surprised to see you kneeling before the hall in plain clothes, completely disheveled. The former Empress was usually arrogant and loved luxury, but today she looked rather pitiful. Who told you to let her kneel? Quickly help her up. At the Emperor's command, the nearby eunuch hurriedly helped you up. The palace maids draped clothes over you, and you tearfully recounted everything that happened today and all you had witnessed. Yet the reserved Emperor, after hearing your account, still wore a skeptical expression. You had already appeared so pitiful. Why was she still like this? This maid had just tried to burn her mistress alive. To survive, she even killed her own sister. Having barely escaped the fire with your life, you came before the hall to seek justice. You thought you could expose the maid's evil deeds, but unexpectedly, she slandered you instead. Wan Shui started trembling as soon as she entered the hall, barely able to walk steady, looking pitiful. You couldn't help but despise her. Her current appearance was far from her previous vicious demeanor. "You are Wan Shui. I just heard from Wei that you started the fire in the cold palace tonight." Hearing this, Wan Shui immediately fell to her knees, crying out that she was wrongly accused. "Even with 10 lives, I wouldn't dare burn my mistress." The deposed Empress was unhappy living in the cold palace and said it herself. Moreover, she claimed you killed Wan Xiang afterward, fearing exposure. What? Wan Xiang is dead? Someone must have silenced her permanently. It seemed your opponents were quite ruthless. You had underestimated the palace intrigue. However, in your modern life, you dealt with cunning old foxes. This girl's tactics were far inferior. Seeing this, you also fell to your knees, saying you had misjudged people. The Emperor, seeing Wei like this for the first time, showed a slight smile. You seem to have grown. Just then, Rong Lin, the chief of Imperial Guards, came to report. He said their investigation found 2 points of origin for the fire. One at the northwest corner outside, another at your bedside in the sleeping quarters. Hearing this, you couldn't help but wonder what sins this Empress had committed to have so many enemies. What benefit would I get from burning my own house? Why does your majesty believe these servants, but not me? The Emperor's eyes turned mockingly cold upon hearing your words. Last year, when you pushed noble consort Ling down the mountain, claiming it was an accident, I believed you and had her maids executed. But later the temple abbot told me she witnessed you pushing her. You're a habitual liar. How can I trust you? You were finally thrown into the imperial prison. Yet you weren't upset, instead leisurely choosing your cell. Since the fire incident, you had told the Emperor everything. You had hoped to clear your name, but unexpectedly, the accused maid turned against you. Even the Emperor didn't believe you, accusing you of being a chronic liar who spoke nonsense. Besides, there are many benefits to burning the palace. Recently, I received your constant pleas to release you from the cold palace, claiming rats were biting you, leaving you restless. Every word seemed genuine. Weren't those your writings? You were speechless, realizing how arrogant this body's previous owner must have been, still so proud even in the cold palace. Lost in thought, a memorial hit you hard on the forehead. You looked up in pain to see it was thrown by the Emperor, who was glaring at you through gritted teeth. Fine. If the cold palace doesn't suit you, let's see if the imperial prison better matches your status. Hearing this, you showed no reaction, only asking the Emperor to grant you his cloak. Thus you were thrown into the imperial prison. Yet far from being afraid, you carefully selected your cell. This one seems nice, bright, and spacious. Just as you were telling the soldier you wanted this cell, an old man's voice came from behind. Not possible. That cell is taken by me. The newcomer was a man nearing 60. The soldiers bowed respectfully to him, addressing him as Lord Su. You thought to yourself that this old man wasn't a prisoner, but actually an official. The soldier whispered to you that he was the Emperor's teacher who now enjoyed writing literature in his spare time. Finding no inspiration outside, he came to the imperial prison to write. Sometimes he would find companionship here. Unexpectedly, this old man saw you and cheekily asked why you were here. What else could you be here for except imprisonment? Not everyone had such leisure time like him. Hearing you were here for imprisonment, the old man eagerly invited you to stay in the cell opposite his, saying it was also good. While others found prison unbearable, you were happily writing novels in prison. Not only that, you even had passionate fans demanding updates. You were Wei Yujin, recently transported to ancient times into the body of an empress with the same name. Unfortunately, you were framed by villains and thrown into prison by the Emperor. Watching old Su passionately writing across from you while you had nothing, you felt extremely bored and wanted something to do, but there seemed to be no entertainment in prison. Watching the old man writing furiously across from you, you suddenly had an idea. Lord Su, excuse me for interrupting your writing, but could you spare me some paper? Being bored, you thought you might write about your car accident as a novel. After 49 hours, you finally reached the ending. Just as you wanted to rest, old Su's voice came from beside you. Why did you stop? Keep writing. You were nearly frightened to death. When did this old man come over? You awkwardly said you needed to use the toilet, but he pestered you like a playful child, insisting you finish the ending first. Helplessly, you had to pick up the brush and finish the novel. Lord Su read your novel and clicked his tongue in approval, saying such a story could sell for a tale of gold outside. People say the former empress is empty-headed, but I don't think so. You were shocked. This old man knew your identity. He said he not only knew who you were, but also what you wanted to do, and he could help. However, the condition was that you help him solve his story's plot. I was so focused on designing a perfect trap in the plot that I trapped myself. Help me solve this puzzle. Shocked, you asked if that was the only condition. He firmly told you yes, just this one condition. Since that was the case, you graciously accepted and began reading Old Su's novel. However, you didn't expect Old Su had given himself such a difficult puzzle. This condition wasn't as simple as it seemed. You were thrown in a prison by the Emperor. Surprisingly, you weren't miserable, but rather enjoying yourself. Not only was your novel well received, but you also had time to discuss story plots with the old man. Lord Su said if you helped him solve the mystery in his novel, he would help you get out. That seemed simple enough. You picked up Old Su's novel and read it carefully. You found the old man's story quite simple, similar to strange tales from a Chinese studio. It was about a rabbit spirit who fell in love with a scholar, following his footsteps to the capital. Everyone knew the rabbit spirit loved the scholar, but he didn't love her. Moreover, for some unknown reason, the scholar committed suicide at the end of the night before the exam. Coincidentally, that night, only the rabbit spirit and the scholar shared that room. Since everyone believed the scholar had no reason to commit suicide, all suspicion pointed to the rabbit spirit. At this point, you asked Old Su if all the doors and windows were locked from inside and undamaged when the scholar died. After getting his confirmation, you sighed at what a difficult puzzle he had created for himself. It looked like suicide, but there were no tools. If it was murder, it couldn't explain the perfect locked room setting. Old Su said if you could solve just this part, he guaranteed the prison couldn't hold you. Since the old man gave his word, you were determined to give it your all and dove back into the story world. After the scholar's death, the rabbit spirit was blamed by everyone as the prime suspect. As a reader, only you knew she had nothing but love for the scholar and never meant him harm. In the scholar's room, the doors and windows were intact, lockable from inside with no risk of coming loose. The desk was also neat and tidy, showing the scholar was a meticulous person. Looking at the window again, you suddenly remembered something and hurried back for a closer look. Outside was a clear stream, but being winter, the surface was completely frozen. Winter, intact doors and windows, neat desk. You recalled all the clues mentioned in the novel. Suddenly the solution emerged in your mind, and you smiled. I know it. This old man hadn't committed any crime, yet came to prison daily, writing novels with great interest. It turned out he was the Emperor's teacher, coming to prison to find inspiration for his novels, finding some peace and quiet. Since coming to prison, you've been looking for a way out. Coincidentally, Old Su hit a wall with his novel and said he'd help you escape if you solved this puzzle. After some thought, you found the solution to the novel's mystery. Seeing you had an idea, Old Su excitedly asked how to solve it. However, you didn't want to reveal your solution so easily. You said you'd tell him the answer, but only after he fulfilled half of his promise. Hearing this, the old man asked puzzledly what you wanted. It's simple. I want to meet someone. Please help me, Lord Su. The next day, just as Wansue woke up, she heard two maids talking about her having some shady dealings with a palace consort. The emperor had even sent people to investigate in prison. Hearing this, she felt both panicked and angry, quickly grabbing the maid in front to ask what was happening. Don't you know? Lady Wei has asked the emperor to confront you. Lady Wei said you had secretly allied with Wang Guiping. Everyone knew Wang Guiping, and Lady Wei had been at odds for a long time. Wansue immediately became angry, cursed at the palace gossip, and left. But after walking away, she still worried about leaving traces that might be discovered. Meanwhile, you were playing Go with Old Su in prison. Suddenly, a servant came and whispered something in the old man's ear. After a while, Old Su smiled and told you there were results from what you asked him to do. If you wanted to know the results, you had to let him win this game and explain how you solved his novel's mystery. You smiled secretly and told him, the story is actually quite simple. Your story takes place in winter, with the river outside frozen, so it must have been very cold. The scholar saw icicles on the eaves and secretly broke one off. At night, he placed the icicle on the ground and stood on the table. By falling straight onto the icicle from height, he could commit suicide, and his body heat would slowly melt the icicle. The blood mixed with water would be indistinguishable. This palace maid betrayed her master for favor, but just as she spoke harshly about her master, the emperor appeared behind her, catching her in the act. After you helped Old Su solve the mystery in his novel, he praised you highly and even offered to share the manuscript fee with you. But money was never what you wanted. From beginning to end, you only wanted to get out of the imperial prison. Meanwhile, Wansue waited many days without seeing the emperor issue a decree to question her. Finally, she couldn't wait any longer. Any more delay might expose everything. So that night, she secretly slipped out of the palace and came to the imperial prison. After bribing the guards, she came before you. "My lady, I heard you wanted to confront me. Long time no see." You smiled at Wansue, telling her not to address you as my lady. Right now you were just a prisoner. Hearing this, Wansue immediately changed her demeanor. She fiercely told you she had no dealings with Wang Guiping. But after everything you'd been through, you now only believed in hard evidence. "Lady Wei, what evidence do you have? You'd better not make false accusations. How could your evidence stand against me? This servant must be delusional." You looked contemptuously at the palace made before you. "A mere servant dares to challenge me? Born to serve others, and Wang Guiping? What a worthless choice. You have quite the dog's eye." Seeing your superior attitude, Wansue's face darkened. "Why should I be born inferior to others? Dog's eye? If I have dog's eyes, you must be truly blind to still think Wang Guiping is behind me. That fool Wang Guiping? What right does he have to command my loyalty? The person behind me is far superior to him, and thousands of times better than you." At this moment, the Emperor's voice came from behind. "Tell me, who dares to be superior to the Empress?" Hearing the Emperor's voice, Wansue's eyes widened like bells. How could the Emperor be here? She fell to her knees with a thud, begging for mercy. The Emperor, furious that he, as ruler of the nation, had been deceived by a mere palace maid. "Since you've already come to this prison yourself, that makes things easier." With that, he ordered Wan-A to join Eruo from the neighboring story of Rui. Though you were the wrong party, you knelt down and admitted fault. This wasn't because you'd lost your mind, but rather a strategy to regain royal favor. You knew Wansue would eventually come to you if she wanted to avoid exposure. So you had arranged for the Emperor to wait in the prison, a trap for her to walk into. The Emperor asked if you knew she would expose herself, which is why you had him wait in the prison. You smiled faintly, saying you were merely innocent. Liars would eventually reveal themselves. Then, you fell to your knees before the Emperor. "Your Majesty, I was wrong. It was my fault for being too unrestrained before, which attracted so many enemies." The Emperor was shocked. Wei Consort had always been arrogant before, yet now she knelt and admitted fault. Since Wei Consort had admitted her mistake, the Emperor decided to give her a way out. "You need not call yourself a commoner. I'll let bygones be bygones. From now on, you must be careful in word and deed." The next day, your status changed dramatically, from prisoner to palace consort. Though only a beauty rank, you had regained royal favor, and the Emperor even gave you your own small courtyard. How delightful. At noon, while sunbathing in your courtyard, you suddenly saw a young palace maid wandering in. You were puzzled, as you hadn't summoned anyone. Who was this palace maid? The visitor said her name was Rui Hui, and she used to work in your kitchen. The lotus seed red bean buns you loved most were made by her. You had some recollection. When Wei Consort was at her lowest, beating and scolding servants, everyone tried to avoid her. Only this kitchen maid remained loyal, always making food for her. You never expected to have such a loyal servant in the palace before. Since that was the case, you decided to make this palace maid your first-rank personal attendant. Hearing this, the little maid's face bloomed with joy. She immediately knelt down and kowtowed in gratitude. You were also pleased. You had a nice little courtyard, and now a loyal maid as well. This woman was doused with cold water as soon as she entered, and was called an ugly woman by the bird. All this was done by Consort Yu, Wei Consort's mortal enemy. Since Rui Hui came to your palace, you'd gained several pounds because her cooking was too delicious. One day while taking an after-meal walk, you suddenly saw a magnificent palace. Looking closely, it was Consort Yu's Xiafei Palace. You'd heard from Rui Hui that Consort Yu was doing well in the palace, but was incompatible with you. There was much bad blood between you. Thinking about this gave you a headache. Though Wei Consort was pitiful, she had been exceptionally good at making enemies. With so many palaces, being assigned near Consort Yu must have been someone's deliberate scheme. You moved closer to look at the wall by the entrance. There was a very cute parrot. You couldn't resist teasing the little fellow. Suddenly, a basin of water was splashed onto you. Even the little parrot was startled and scrambled around its cage. "Is this how you treat guests, Consort Yu?" Consort Yu was sitting leisurely by the window, sipping tea. She seemed quite pleased seeing you drenched. "This feathered beast is new and keeps disturbing me. I thought to quiet it with water. Who knew I'd hit you instead? After all, who'd expect Beauty Wei to wander here? Weren't you the one who despised me most before? You wanted to argue, but your memories showed you were indeed in the wrong. When Beauty Wei first entered the palace, she was skilled at making fragrances and gained the emperor's favor. This displeased Wei consort, who found an excuse to punish her by making her scrub floors for days. Later, when you angered the emperor, consort Yu was by his side, adding fuel to the fire. This led to you being punished with 3 months of meditation. Then you made her scrub floors for 3 months, turning her from the fragrant beauty to the stinking beauty. You thought this consort was childish, but now you realized you were truly in the wrong. But now you didn't want to create more trouble. Making enemies in the palace wasn't wise. This maid was just slow to speak. She was beaten mercilessly by the instructor matron. But this earned your recognition, and she became your first-rank maid. Since your last meeting with Consort Yu, knowing she disliked you, before leaving, you removed your jade bracelet and gave it to her. This jade bracelet was given to me by His Majesty. I remember Sister liked it, so I'll give it to Sister. With that, you tossed the bracelet into the maid's water basin. Early this morning, the instructor matron brought many maids for you to choose from. Looking at the crowd before you, you thought having Rui Hui and one more first-rank maid would be enough. Having been a senior executive before transmigrating, you had a sharp eye for talent. Looking at the maids before you, your eyes were dazzled, but you couldn't find anyone suitable. Just then, you noticed one maid who seemed different. Her hands were covered in scars, new wounds mixed with old ones, showing she had suffered much. Can you tell me what happened to your hands? Hearing your question, the little maid stammered, unable to give a clear answer. After a while, she finally muttered that she had cut herself. Just then, the matron beside her started beating her. Who taught you to speak like that? Have you forgotten all your training? Seeing this, you quickly asked the matron to stop, stepped forward to hold her hand, and asked if she'd like to come with you. From now on, you'll be called Rui Qin. You'll follow me. Hearing the name you gave, similar to your first-rank maid Rui Hui, the matron was shocked and said it might not be appropriate to promote her to first-rank maid now. But you weren't one to be pushed around, immediately showing a sharp look to the old woman. Are you trying to interfere with me? The matron quickly waved her hands, saying she wouldn't dare. From then on, you had 2 first-rank maids. Life in the palace became quite comfortable, with Rui Hui preparing different dishes for you every day. Several days passed like this without notice. However, this morning, a palace maid brought something that greatly disturbed you. Early in the morning, this woman received a gift from her predecessor. Frightened, she quickly threw it away. She ordered the palace maids to destroy everything. Since moving into this small courtyard, everything had felt comfortable. Not only were there delightful views to enjoy, but also skilled palace maids making delicious food daily. This morning, just as you woke up, Rui Hui brought a box. She said it was from a maid in the cold palace. Opening it, you found mostly ordinary old items, but a pair of chopsticks caught your attention. Looking closely, you saw 2 characters for mad written on the chopstick tips. Why were there 2 mad characters? You suddenly remembered Wei Consort's old lover. Wasn't he the madman? Frightened, you threw away what you were holding. Had he gone mad? These items would be a serious crime if discovered. You quickly ordered Rui Hui to take these items away and dispose of them. Just as Rui Hui was about to leave with the box, you spotted a letter inside. Wait, leave that letter for me to read. If this was a letter from Wei Consort to the madman, carelessly discarding, it could be dangerous if found. After reading it, you discovered it wasn't a love letter, but rather seemed to be Wei Consort's will. I have 4 regrets in life. First, my learning was mediocre. General Feng was learned in both civil and military matters. I couldn't catch his eye. Second, I failed as the mother of the nation, unable to manage the imperial harem well. Third, I was foolish and ignorant, being used by others, making many stupid mistakes, leading to criticism from all. Fourth, I failed my parents and brother. My brother was originally brilliant, but was ruined because of me. At the end of the letter, it mentioned hoping to make up for these regrets in the next life. Reading this, you felt pity for Wei Consort and decided to fight a winning battle in their place. Early the next morning, while still sleeping, you were suddenly awakened by noisy bird calls. Rui Hui rushed in, saying Consort Yu, whom you'd met before, had come to visit. You thought it was like a weasel paying New Year's respect respects to chickens. Consort, you surely had ill intentions. Nevertheless, you had Ruehue help you dress, wanting to see what consort you was up to. This woman received a parrot as a gift, but as soon as she got it, the parrot called her ugly. It turned out this was all consort you's doing. This morning, while sleeping soundly, you were suddenly woken by noisy bird calls outside. You quickly called Ruehue in to ask what was happening outside. Ruehue said consort you had come to visit and was already seated in the hall. So it was her. No wonder it was so noisy. After quickly tidying up, you went to the main hall. As soon as you entered, consort you sarcastically remarked that you must be incapable, coming out without makeup. Looking at her 3 layers of powder and rouge, you thought to yourself she must have gotten up very early for this. Though annoyed, you forced a smile and asked why she'd come so early. Consort you smiled and said she loved the bracelet you gave her and had come specifically to return the favor. Remembering what Ruehue said about how consort you had thrown away the bracelet right after leaving, you knew today's visit wasn't just about returning a gift. As you were thinking, consort you suddenly patted the birdcage in front of her and said, "This is your gift." Looking at the fluttering, noisy shadow before you, you suspected consort you was up to no good. Sure enough, the next moment the parrot shouted at you, "So ugly." Seeing you embarrassed, consort you couldn't stop laughing, claiming she hadn't trained it and asking you not to blame her. Ruehue, standing behind you, was so angry she wanted to intervene, but you held her back. One becomes like one's company. It learned such bad behavior before, but after 2 days with me, it'll behave better. Hearing your words, consort you's face darkened with anger. She immediately waved her hand, saying she felt unwell and needed to return to her chambers to rest. Watching her leave, you sighed at how difficult it was to deal with these beauties. Ruehue praised you, saying you were amazing to make that woman look so upset with just one sentence. Just then, the mynah bird's calls caught her attention. You watched as she stormed over to the parrot and gave it a scolding. In no time, she had tied up the mynah bird. "This bird is keeping your highness from sleeping, so I made it quiet. How would you like to deal with it?" You had only asked the palace maids to buy some flower pots, but unexpectedly, they brought back a box of silver. Even more surprising was that all this silver came from your novel writing. With the maid's home visit day approaching, you looked at your 2 first-rank maids still dressed so poorly. So you gave Ruehue a silver ingot to buy some fabric and make proper clothes. Ruehue smiled so happily her eyes curved like crescents. Seeing your generosity, Ruechin asked where you got the money after the cold palace fire. You laughed heartily, saying that as a consort, you could certainly afford to support them. But in reality, you were probably the poorest in the palace. Everything in the palace required silver, and you were struggling to manage. You called Ruechin into the room, saying you had something for her. Seeing her hands covered in wounds, you felt sympathetic and gave her your hand cream. "This is my hand cream. You're my personal maid now. You shouldn't do such rough work anymore." Seeing your thoughtfulness, Ruechin burst into tears. Crying, she confessed she had lied earlier. Her wounds were caused by the training matrons. Seeing how much Ruechin had suffered, you held her hands and said that now that she's with you, such things would never happen again. Perhaps moved by your warmth, Ruechin smiled and said she'd stay by your side during the home visit period, since she had no family anyway. "I appreciate your sentiment, but you should still go out, see the outside world and relax. Oh, and please bring back some popular picture books for me. You wanted to see what people typically enjoyed reading these days." The next day, when Ruechin returned, she said someone wanted to see you. Just as you were wondering who it could be, a large wooden box landed with a thud in front of you. Then came Old Sue's voice, saying he heard you were looking for picture books. He said he happened to meet your maid asking around for picture books outside the palace, so he followed her back to check. As he opened the box for you, you saw it was filled with picture books. You had only helped the author solve one riddle, yet received a large box of silver from Old Sue. Not because he was grateful for your help, but because your words had been proven right without delay. After Ruechin's home visit, she brought someone back who wanted to see you. Looking closely, it was Old Sue. It turned out he had seen Ruechin using your name in the market, so he followed along to see what you were up to. When you opened the box, you found it was full of picture books. I arranged them from top to bottom according to popularity. The ones on top are the best-selling ones. Old Sue then took out The Waste Thief, saying it was the best-selling book in stores. He mentioned they printed 1,000 copies initially and had 3 more printings in just a few months. You were amazed that these stories, which would seem so ordinary in the future, could be so popular now. Before you could think further, Old Sue pointed to another book below. Hearing Old Sue's words, you wondered if there might be something else at the bottom of the box. Sure enough, after removing the books, the bottom of the box was full of silver. Old Sue said he had promised to give you the manuscript fees and didn't want to keep your money. This silver from Old Sue was truly a godsend, as you were in need of money. Old Sue also mentioned that the bookstore owner valued your writing highly and asked about your identity, wanting to commission news stories. He said if you agreed to write, he would help sell them and only take a 10% commission. Hearing this, you were overjoyed. How could you refuse such an offer? Meanwhile, bookstore owner Yi Yin-sun was rushing to the emperor's quarters with a token. Seeing Mr. Yi arrive, the emperor quickly asked if it was about his previous inquiry. Mr. Yi said he had discovered that the case in The Rabbit Spirit wasn't written by Old Sue, but by a young friend who helped. The emperor immediately asked who this person was. Mr. Yi explained that Old Sue wouldn't reveal much about this young friend, but he had managed to get him to ask that person to write stories directly. Excellent. This storyteller has both wit and talent, single-handedly reviving the reading culture in the capital. The novel you worked so hard to write was being used to wrap fish bones by others. You couldn't even show your anger and had to pretend nothing was wrong, because a palace woman writing stories would be scandalous if discovered. That evening, when you returned to the palace, you found your manuscript missing. After asking the cleaning maids, you learned consort you had just visited. Hearing this, you knew something was wrong and rushed to Xiafei Palace with Rui Hui and Rui Qin. As soon as you entered, you asked if consort you had taken your things. She was having dinner and quickly smiled, saying she didn't know these were important to you. She then had her maid return the items to you. Looking at them, you saw the novel you had worked so hard to write had been used to wrap fish bones, making you frown with anger. Consort you was clearly trying to provoke you, sarcastically saying she hadn't thought much of mere paper. She even brazenly asked you to tell her what was written on them, so she could replace them exactly. You panicked at this. As a palace consort, how could anyone know you were writing stories? Just as you were at a loss, the emperor's voice came from behind. Whatever was written, it belongs to her. Taking it was your mistake. Hearing the emperor's arrival, consort you turned pale and jumped from her seat. You turned to see the emperor had indeed come, frozen in shock. You even forgot to bow until the emperor reminded you. You quickly gave your proper greetings, but he seemed even more displeased seeing you bow. The emperor had grown accustomed to your previous willful behavior, and this new propriety felt strange to him. He couldn't understand why someone who once dared to defy even the Empress Dowager was now so humble. At this point, consort you couldn't bear it anymore and tried to charm the emperor. But the emperor wasn't fooled, having witnessed her malicious behavior. Without hesitation, he ordered the eunuchs to take Consort Yu away for punishment. Consort Yu's eyes widened like brass bells in fear. At that moment, you stepped forward, and your action surprised the emperor greatly. This woman not only used your hard-written novel as wrapping paper, but also mocked you for being a nobody without any backing. Just as the argument was heating up, the emperor appeared and saw this vicious woman's true nature. Without hesitation, he ordered the guards to expel this wicked woman from the palace. Hearing this, the woman's face turned pale with fear, forgetting even how to speak. At this moment, you stepped forward and told the emperor it wasn't a big deal, asking him not to be angry. The emperor frowned, not understanding why you would plead for someone who had wronged you. Suddenly, he noticed the bracelet he gave you was missing from your wrist. Consort Wei, where's the bracelet I gave you? Why aren't you wearing it? As soon as he said this, Consort Yu's face grew even paler because you had given her that bracelet and she had thrown it away. You quickly explained that you wouldn't dare wear such a precious gift casually and kept it safely in your room. The emperor was furious. This foolish woman couldn't see he was trying to defend her honor. Not wanting to get further entangled in this matter, you quickly led the emperor away. Back in your courtyard, the emperor noticed a book on your small table and asked if you were reading it. You said you were just casually browsing it out of boredom. This puzzled the emperor, as you never liked reading before. Had your time in the cold palace changed you? However, seeing it was just a picture book, he dismissed his concerns. I knew you wouldn't read anything serious. Though the case in this book is cleverly designed, the author would make a good detective. You felt amused inside. He would never guess that the detective was standing right beside him. No, you couldn't let him focus on the picture book any longer. You quickly changed the subject. You asked if he had eaten. Your Majesty, Ruehae in my courtyard is an excellent cook. Since you rarely visit, won't you try her cooking? Though the emperor had already had dinner, for some reason, he said he hadn't eaten. After dinner, the emperor was reviewing memorials in your room. You wondered why he wasn't leaving even though dinner was over. Suddenly, you realized something. You were one of the emperor's consorts. As a palace consort, these women showed no manners, entering others' quarters without permission, eating others' food, and leaving melon seeds and paper scraps everywhere. That night at bedtime, you found yourself unable to sleep. Your mind was filled with thoughts of that night with the emperor. Since you couldn't sleep anyway, you decided to work on your novel. You thought people in this world had never seen anything like your writing. Your picture books would surely take the capital by storm. Before you knew it, morning had come. Ruehue entered as usual to clean. She found you at your desk, focused on writing your picture book. Ruehue was curious why you were up so early. But when you turned around with dark circles under your eyes, she realized you'd been writing all night. My lady, how could you stay up all night? Hearing Ruehue's exclamation, you finally realized it was morning. You stumbled to your bed, telling Ruehue not to disturb you unless necessary. Just as you dozed off, Ruehue came to wake you with urgent news. My lady, there are visitors outside, and quite a few of them. You hated being disturbed while sleeping, so you got up irritably to see who dared disturb you. Outside, you saw a group of court ladies chatting and laughing. Looking down, you saw melon seeds and fruit peels scattered everywhere. You knew their intentions weren't good, but to you, these were amateur tactics. Ruehue saw your sinister smile and felt a chill down her spine. It was the first time Ruehue had seen her mistress smile like this. Someone was about to be in trouble. Seeing you come out, one of the beauties took the initiative to attack. Consort Wei, how arrogant of you. We've been waiting for so long. You weren't afraid at all, just casually asked, "Who are you?" Seeing your calmness, the other party was momentarily stunned, not knowing how to respond. Consort Wei, have you lost your mind? You don't even recognize Consort's son. Upon hearing this, you thought it was some joke. Oh, so you're also a consort? Then there's no need for me to know you. Never provoke a woman who's returned from the cold palace. And never sit on someone else's stool, because once she's angered, she might draw a knife and kill. That day, while you were sleeping soundly, Ruehue suddenly woke you up, saying there were visitors outside. When you went out to look, you saw it was a group specifically coming to cause trouble. How despicable. They not only entered your courtyard without permission, but also littered everywhere. Consort's son started criticizing you as soon as you appeared, complaining about having to wait. But when you learned she was of the same rank as you mockingly said there was no need for introductions. And this stool is my favorite. I even took it to the cold palace. I see you like it too. Hearing this, Consort's son felt the stool was unlucky and quickly stood up. Seeing you approach menacingly, Consort's son was so frightened she didn't know what to do. What are you doing? I warn you, don't come too close. You weren't interested in dealing with her. You just wanted to sit in your own spot. You sat on your stool and leisurely ate melon seeds. This arrogant attitude infuriated the two consorts. Then another consort spoke up. Consort Wei, as a former empress, you should know palace etiquette better than anyone. You may not remember these consorts, but how dare you not bow to me? Where are your manners? You turned around disdainfully and asked, "And who might this be?" Consort's son mockingly said, "This is noble consort Jean. Hurry and pay your respects." Noble consort Jean then spoke, saying she hadn't congratulated you on your return and demanded you kowtow to receive her gift. But you were too proud to deal with such riffraff, just continuing to eat your melon seeds, ignoring them. Noble consort Jean, having lost face, became furious. You should know the punishment for such disrespect. But you weren't intimidated. You just dusted off your hands and said, "About rules, there's one thing you might not know. You have no authority to punish me, at least not until you leave this courtyard." Everyone was confused by your words. They only saw you stand up and reach under the stool. This woman had just woken up and was ready to stab someone. It wasn't because she was crazy, but because these women were too much. Not only did they trespass and litter, they even demanded you kneel to humiliate you. Facing these troublemaking consorts, you ignored them and just sat eating melon seeds. Until Jin Ping deliberately demanded you kowtow to receive her gift. You couldn't tolerate such humiliation and were furious. So you stood up and dusted off your hands. You reached for something under the stool, confusing everyone. Do you know why I took this stool to the cold palace? Because it was so lonely there. As you spoke, you pulled something out from under the stool. Seeing this, everyone backed away, shouting that you must be crazy to dare harm them. You said you might be crazy, but as they said, you didn't want to harm them. Hearing this, the consort sighed in relief, feeling lucky. But before they could feel relieved for too long, you said, "Indeed, I don't want to hurt you, because I plan to kill you." Hearing this, everyone screamed for help and ran around in panic. They desperately wanted to escape your courtyard and return to their palaces. The scene was quite spectacular, and it even startled you. You thought to yourself how easily frightened the women of this era were. The knife in your hand was actually carved from a yam by Rui Hui and Rui Xin during their free time. At this moment, the women in the courtyard saw you raise the knife and all shouted for you not to kill them. Now you were embarrassed. These spectators were too cooperative. No one even noticed it wasn't real. Just then, the emperor appeared at your door with a group of people, shouting stop. Seeing the emperor, the consorts all cried pitifully, calling out, "Your Majesty." Li Shirong's expression couldn't have been worse. The emperor angrily asked what you were doing, and Exine rushed over to you. Seeing this situation, you thought this impulsive act might send you back to the cold palace. The palace rules were extremely strict. One consort was demoted to beauty rank just for littering melon seed shells in someone else's courtyard. The emperor approved her demotion from consort to beauty rank. You never imagined a knife made of yam could frighten a group of consorts into running wild. Just as you were marveling at how these spectators were too convincing to back down from, the emperor's voice suddenly came from behind. "Everyone stop." He rushed over and snatched the knife from your hand. Seeing this, the consorts behind all knelt down, crying for the emperor to uphold justice for them. But unexpectedly, the emperor turned and shouted at them, "Enough! While I'm still in the palace, you dare to trespass and bully Beauty Wei, forcing her to defend herself with a knife." Hearing this, the previously complaining consorts were all shocked into silence. Even you were surprised. The emperor not only didn't blame you, but took your side. What was happening? It turned out that just a quarter hour ago, Eunuch Sichuan reported that Beauty Wei was being bullied again. Hearing this, the emperor couldn't sit still. Remembering how Wei Jingyu could fight 100 men alone, he thought nothing serious would happen. But he still couldn't help coming to check. At the palace gate, he found you holding a knife, shouting at others to stay back. This frightened the emperor. You used to be so capable, even daring to challenge him, but now you seemed so timid. Don't use knives anymore. You might hurt yourself without proper control. Hearing this, Jingting couldn't stay quiet and hurriedly explained that wasn't the case, asking the emperor to let him explain. But the emperor ignored him and asked, "Whose courtyard is this?" Jingting stammered that it was yours. "Then who ate these melon seeds and fruits?" Jinping was too embarrassed to answer, finally managing to say it was them. "You came without invitation, bringing gifts clearly not meant for a visit. Isn't this trespassing and bullying?" The emperor then ordered everyone to kneel for 3 months and reflect in isolation for 5 days. Hearing this, Jinping was angry, but thought since she outranked you by 6 ranks, she secretly vowed to get revenge. But be careful what you wish for. The emperor immediately ordered Jinping to be demoted from noble consort to beauty. As everyone knows, don't raise flags too early or they'll fall. This woman had merely thought about it, but the next second she was demoted from consort to beauty rank. Jinping had been arrogant because of her noble consort position. She even tried to humiliate you by making you kneel. But unexpectedly, the emperor witnessed her bullying you. With one imperial decree, you were promoted to consort Wei, and he ordered that without his written permission, no outsiders were allowed to disturb you. By the time the mess with Jingding was resolved, it was nearly noon. Rui Hui suggested the emperor stay for lunch. But seeing the mess of cups and plates in the courtyard, you felt it wasn't appropriate to host guests in such conditions. So you hurriedly joined the maids in cleaning the courtyard with brooms and cloths. The emperor was surprised to see you, a ranked consort, cleaning alongside servants. After all, you were once a privileged lady who needed assistance even to drink water, but now you were sweeping floors. The emperor suddenly felt his heart being pulled by an invisible string with a subtle ache. It was painful to see such a precious pearl tarnished, like a white crane fallen into mud. He grabbed the broom from your hands and gave it to Sichuan, telling you to rest and let the servants handle such rough work. "I won't stay for lunch today, but I'll visit you another time." Before leaving, he deliberately warned you not to use knives carelessly. He said he wouldn't forgive you otherwise, then crushed your yam knife under his foot. As you picked up the broken half of the knife, something quietly bloomed in your heart. This emperor wasn't so hateful after all, he was actually quite endearing. On the second day after the incident, eunuch Sichuan brought an imperial decree to your palace. You were promoted from beauty to consort, becoming the main resident of this palace. After handing you the decree, Sichuan slipped you a small note, saying it was from the emperor. You sighed, thinking how peculiar it was for a nation's ruler to act like a schoolboy, still passing notes to you. From now on, you need not endure disrespect from lower-ranked consorts. If I learn you're being bullied again, you'll be in trouble. This Thunder Emperor, after 2.5 years, still like playing with schoolboy no-passing tricks. Today was your investiture as consort. After reading the imperial decree, little eunuch Sichuan secretly passed you a note, saying it was from the emperor. You couldn't help thinking the emperor was not only tsundere but also childish, still playing such games at his age. Opening it, you found his reminder not to let other consorts bully you, saying it would pain him. A smile crept onto your lips, surprised to see such a gentle side to his usually cold and stern demeanor. Sichuan was satisfied seeing your reaction and smiled, saying he could now report back to his majesty. I won't disturb your rest anymore, my lady. I'll take my leave. As soon as Sichuan left, Rui couldn't help teasing that you were smiling while reading the letter. You naughty girl, teasing your mistress now? Do you want to practice boxing with Ruei-chin? Remembering how sore she was for days after practicing with Ruei-chin last time, Ruei-hui's face turned as white as wallpaper. She quickly made an excuse about the sun and tried to slip away. Suddenly remembering something, you instructed Ruei-hui to prepare a plate of lotus seed red bean buns, saying you wanted to thank a friend. Meanwhile, Beauty Yu was enjoying seeds in one hand and a chicken leg in the other. She suddenly looked up and saw you at her courtyard entrance. The atmosphere immediately became awkward as you caught her in her foodie moment. Why are you always eating whenever I come by, Beauty Yu? Hearing this, Beauty Yu quickly dropped the fragrant chicken leg back onto the plate. She grabbed her teacup and pretended to calmly drink tea. You smiled and said you brought nothing special, just a plate of lotus seed red bean buns, hoping she wouldn't mind. Seeing the plate of buns Ruei-hui brought, she glanced at them briefly. Then, closing her eyes haughtily, she began to say, "Such unexpected kindness." Before she could finish, you leaned close and asked if she was the one who called the emperor yesterday. Beauty Yu's eyes widened in surprise as she asked how you knew. But as soon as she spoke, she covered her mouth, realizing she had accidentally exposed herself. This woman was once your sworn enemy, who would order her servants to splash you with cold water at the slightest disagreement. Now she was secretly helping you, yet still stubbornly refusing to admit it when exposed. This was thanks to how you handled her previous bullying. You didn't hold it against her. Instead, you begged the emperor not to punish her, helping her escape punishment. Yesterday, when Consort Jean brought a group to cause trouble at your residence, the emperor appeared at the crucial moment. He not only demoted Consort Jean to beauty, but also promoted you to consort. Without someone's secret help, how would the emperor have known to come? So you immediately guessed that Beauty Yu must have been the one helping you. You ordered Ruei-hui to bring a plate of lotus seed red bean buns to Xiafei Palace. Before you could explain further, Beauty Yu revealed everything herself. But she remained proud. After all, you two were once sworn enemies. Fine, it doesn't matter if you know. I just wanted His Majesty to visit me. But your place was in chaos, making him unhappy. With such commotion in your courtyard yesterday, it's unlike him not to show his face. The informant wouldn't dare come. That's normal, right, Sister Yu? Hearing this, Beauty Yu couldn't continue making excuses. But she proudly admitted she helped you because she had a grudge against those consorts who bullied you. You found her behavior quite endearing. Regardless, I accept this favor. If you need anything in the future, feel free to ask me. After thanking Beauty Yu, you left to return to your palace. Unexpectedly, just as you left, she called out, "Hey Wei, now that you're Princess Huarong, you should protect me. Show your old spirit. Don't let outsiders walk all over us." Hearing this, you understood she had finally accepted you. Without hesitation, you just waved and left. Meanwhile, noble consort, you was throwing teacups in anger. His Majesty's actions are too unpredictable. I can't read him anymore. This isn't a good sign. This emperor studied too diligently. He wouldn't even pay attention to his most beloved consort. It's her fault for being illiterate. She thought the emperor was reading sacred texts. That's why he ignored her. But actually, the emperor just found his picture book more interesting than her. Early that morning, bookstore owner Yi came to present your new picture book to the emperor. It just arrived from Sujaleo, and I immediately copied it for you. I read a few pages. It's definitely by that mysterious person. Their pen name is People's Little Friend. This book is impossible to put down once picked up. The Emperor looked at the book's title, thinking it was just another common cultivation story, nothing special. He thought, how fresh could it be? Probably just recycled stories. However, the first page shocked him. The protagonist died on the first page. What? This got him more and more intrigued. Recently, noble consort, you heard about your promotion and was throwing teacups in anger. The Emperor's current behavior had become completely unpredictable to her. This couldn't continue. Butterfly, go see what His Majesty is doing. But Butterfly said the Emperor was tired and would likely rest after handling state affairs. Then we must hurry. I have this excellent incense from last time. Come with me to deliver it. Arriving at the palace, they saw the Emperor holding a book. Noble consort, you called out sweetly, Your Majesty. Seeing her, the Emperor asked why she came so late. Why aren't you resting at this hour, Your Majesty? What are you reading? The Emperor put down the book, but she couldn't read the characters, only recognizing the words peoples and two. So she awkwardly told the Emperor she wasn't very literate. This is a sage's treatise about ancient sages discussing the Tao with their disciples. Hearing this, noble consort, you immediately turned into a fangirl, endlessly praising the Emperor's studiousness. She mentioned finding some incense that she wanted to appreciate with the Emperor. They say it's best used before sleep. I'd like to try it with Your Majesty. As she spoke, she tried to press her greasy lips closer. This woman deliberately exposed her neck, eagerly offering her 5-spice pork lips. But unexpectedly, the man before her showed no reaction. He was even in a daze, unresponsive to any calls. All this was because of your new book. While noble consort you was speaking, the Emperor had already entered the book's world. After Wei Zitong joined the beggar's sect, he met a young lady from a wealthy family, who turned out to be the daughter of an immortal cultivation sect leader. Beyond the mortal realm lay the 9 heavens, where mortals were less than ants in a mortal's eyes. Hearing this, noble consort you was surprised and eagerly waited for the Emperor to continue the story. The Emperor suddenly slapped the table and stood up, but he never expected that wealthy young lady was actually a demon in disguise, trying to lead him into evil ways, teaching him unorthodox methods. Noble consort you was captivated and quickly asked, what happened next? Unexpectedly, the Emperor put his hand on her shoulder. Well, I don't know either. Then he told noble consort you to return to her palace. I need to finish this book. I'm busy tonight, come back another day. This made noble consort you anxious, but the Emperor ignored her words. He waved his hand, dismissing her, ordering servants to escort her back to her palace. Noble consort you was frustrated. The story was cut off halfway, and the Emperor wouldn't tell her what happened next. She came to get closer to the Emperor, but unexpectedly found herself drawn into the story instead. You had no idea how popular your novel had become. Your Immortal's Path to Immortality was now selling like wildfire in the capital. Many couldn't buy it even with money. Your book had become priceless and scarce. Even bookstore owner, you stayed up late reading your novel, getting teased by Sujaleo for not taking care of himself at his age. You even gave your novel genre a new name, Rebirth System Literature. The story began with Wei Zitong's revenge. In his previous life, he was ordinary but was wrongfully killed. His greatest wish after returning was revenge. You never imagined your novels would spread throughout the capital. People scrambled to buy your books, some willing to pay 10 times the price on the black market. To explain how captivating the story was, it started from chapter 1. Wei Zitong lived an ordinary previous life before being wrongfully killed. After returning, his greatest wish was revenge. After Rebirth, he quickly discovered a mysterious system in his mind, though it seemed useless. His reborn self was no different from before, still poor and bullied. No matter how he tried to use the system, nothing worked. He gradually lost hope. He knew to find the true culprit, he had to make something of himself. So he joined the darkest, most chaotic local beggars sect. A year later, he left the sect. Over 300 days of life and death struggles had turned him into cold steel. He met a beauty on his journey, but she wasn't benign. She crept into his room at night. Looking carefully at the shadow on the wall, the woman's back was snow white with 9 tails swaying. She was a 9-tailed fox spirit. Being human is suffering. Being a god is boring. Let me lead you to become a great demon. How about experiencing all worldly pleasures? Wei Zitong refused. This triggered a system quest. Where is the real, wealthy young lady? The story ended there with a cliffhanger. Everyone in the capital complained, saying what's the point of only writing half the story? Your novel became so famous that even the palace ladies were hooked on your books. Yumarin said many concubines had come to her, all wanting to discuss Wei Zitong. You were shocked. Had the entire palace started reading? Yumarin teased that everyone reads nowadays, and books were hard to get. Looking around, only noble consort you had a copy in the entire palace, which she'd snatched from her brother. You wondered, didn't you give Yumarin a copy? Why was there only one in the palace now? Why else do you think those concubines keep visiting me? Thanks to you, I even got to know Wei Mingxiang. Master, I want to ask something. You sensed something bad was coming and quickly tried to stop her, but it was too late. This woman would wake up from nightmares every midnight, all because her novel was too popular. Not only was everyone in the capital scrambling to read it, but Yumarin also kept begging you to urge the author for updates. One night while sleeping, Yumarin's face appeared in your dream, asking if you'd written more. But weren't you the author? You sat up startled, shouting, "I'm writing." Ruehue heard the noise and rushed in, asking what happened. Seeing Ruehue's figure, you realized it was just a dream. The constant pressure for updates was affecting your mental state, so you quickly asked Ruehue to grind ink. You had to finish writing quickly to escape this nightmare. While writing, you suddenly heard an alluring voice calling. Opening your drowsy eyes, you saw a red tail appear before you. How could there be a tail here? You couldn't understand. When you turned around, you nearly wet yourself. Somehow you had 9 large tails behind you. How do I have tails? When did they grow? Not believing what you saw, you pinched your cheek but felt no pain. It seemed you had fallen into a dream, the same scene from your book. Suddenly a door appeared before you, and you couldn't resist wanting to open it. Young master, why aren't you resting yet? As the words came out, you realized it wasn't your voice speaking. Unexpectedly, in your dream, you couldn't control this body, and coincidentally, you dreamed of the book's only restricted content. Wei Zitong, hearing your call, walked over in a daze. When you saw his face, your eyes widened like copper bells. This Wei Zitong looked exactly like Li Shirong. The 9-tailed fox leaned toward Wei Zitong. Young master, do you find me unreasonable? Have you grown tired of me? She advanced step by step, pushing him to the bed. Wei Zitong angrily asked, do you know what you're doing? Of course I know. I'm going to cherish you properly. As a novelist, you only knew how to sleep all day. Not only that, sleep wasn't enough. You were having romantic dreams. In the dream, you became the 9-tailed fox from your book, finding Wei Zitong, advancing step by step, whispering about wanting to play cards together. Wei Zitong grabbed the tail in fright, asking, do you know what you're saying? Of course I do. I just wonder if you understand. With that, she pushed Wei Zitong onto the bed. Young master, hold me tight through this long night. Then the two became lost in passion, forgetting heaven and earth. You blushed instantly. This shameless fox. But you couldn't control this body and could only watch helplessly. Worst of all, not only was this happening, but the male lead had your lover's face. Just then, Ruehue rushed in, telling you to get up quickly. She said the emperor was coming. Z straightened up immediately, asking Ruehue if the emperor had arrived. Fortunately, Ruehue said eunuch Sichuan had just come to announce it, and the emperor was probably on his way. Hearing this, you quickly ordered her to hide your manuscript and replace it with the chicken pecking drawing you made days ago. Half an hour ago, the emperor had also read this chapter, where Wei Zitong and the fox spirit pretended to be intimate. At the height of passion, it suddenly stopped. He took advantage while the fox spirit was dazed. He tied up the fox spirit with rope, which triggered the system quest to find the real wealthy young lady. Just as it reached the most exciting part, the novel abruptly ended. This sequence left the emperor burning with desire, not knowing how to release it. Now that the novel was finished, he certainly couldn't focus on court documents. So he called Sichuan to accompany him outside the palace. Sichuan hurried in to ask where the emperor wanted to go. This question suddenly reminded the emperor of the courtyard from the book. The description mentioned that the elder's courtyard had a grapevine, a loquat tree, and a small fishless pond. Coincidentally, this matched your courtyard exactly, so he immediately ordered Sichuan to go to Baija Pavilion. Other concubines would die for the emperor's knightly favor. But you were different. Not only did you not want it, you even discussed recent novels with him. That night, while the emperor was secretly reading erotic novels, he unexpectedly read about the fox spirit and Wei Zitong's intimacy. Just as his interest was piqued, the novel suddenly ended, leaving him unsatisfied. The romantic content made the emperor's whole body hot and restless. He smiled, wanting release. So he called Sichuan, planning to visit your courtyard. But unexpectedly, you had just finished having a spring dream. You were suddenly awakened by Reihui saying the emperor had arrived. You got up, not bothering with makeup, and hurried out to greet him. Unexpectedly, the emperor's first words were, "Little lady, tending to your garden so late, why aren't you resting?" You were stunned. These were lines straight from your book. The emperor continued the role play. "Does the little lady find my words tiresome? Have you grown tired of me?" You were completely bewildered. The person from your dream had appeared in reality the next moment. You stammered, "Of course I like your majesty." Seeing you didn't give the book's response, he felt awkward. But then he noticed you hadn't tidied yourself up. Looking closely, your cheeks were still flushed, and your hair slightly disheveled. A perfect picture of beauty just awakened. You were confused, not understanding what the emperor meant. Before you could think further, he suddenly lifted you by the waist. Carrying you to the bed inside, he pressed you firmly beneath him. You panicked as he asked tenderly against your face, "Do you like me?" Then he held your face and kissed you, making you blush like a monkey's bottom. "Do you know what I'm doing?" Hearing this, you immediately tensed up, absolutely refusing to answer his question. You needed to think carefully and find the perfect response. You had an idea. Just change the subject. "Your Majesty, have you been reading Mortal's Path to Godhood?" The emperor was surprised and asked how you knew. The words Your Majesty just spoke sounded familiar, like lines from that book. In the palace, you were unusually bold. You even dared to make a bet with the emperor and raise the stakes from 100 taels of silver to 100 taels of gold. The emperor wanted to be intimate with you tonight, but you weren't in the mood. So you quickly changed the subject, asking if he'd read that popular novel recently. Learning his beloved consort was also reading this book, the emperor was overjoyed. "What do you think Wei Zitong will do next?" The fox spirit transformed into the wealthy lady, while the real lady's whereabouts are unknown. Only the fox knows what's next. Wei Zitong is still a man. How could he resist such a beauty? Hearing this, you firmly told the emperor. The emperor smiled. "My dear, you're naive. I have 3,000 beauties in my harem. Yet I couldn't speak so confidently." You smirked and said he definitely could, because Wei Zitong was impotent. As a man, hearing such words, the emperor immediately protested. But as the author, you knew the plot development, so you insisted it was possible. Hearing this, the emperor became more agitated and wanted to bet 100 taels. Sensing profit, you suggested changing it from silver to gold. Thus, the emperor left cursing, warning he'd wait to see you cry. Soon after, your novel's second part went on sale. It sold out quickly due to overwhelming demand. Meanwhile, the emperor received his copy from Master Yi. He eagerly opened it, desperate to know if Wei Zitong was really impotent. But the results shocked him. Wei Zitong pressed the beautiful woman onto the bed, but at the crucial moment, everything stopped. His manhood had suddenly failed him without warning. The emperor wailed in despair, refusing to accept this. His 100 taels of gold were gone. Si Chuan heard his voice and rushed in, thinking something was wrong. Embarrassed, the emperor quickly dismissed him, claiming he was just punishing someone. After Si Chuan left, he frantically reopened the book, thinking he must have misread it. This impotent man still tried to force himself on her. The woman was actually a fox spirit in disguise, and they even played with ropes. But he didn't really want anything with the fox. The system had just given him a mission to find a real lady. Wei Zitong noticed a small knife on the nearby table. He picked it up and approached the fox spirit. "Young master wants my life? Then take it." Wei Zitong was surprised by the fox spirit's fearlessness. The fox spirit then said if it died, the lady would never be found. Wei Zitong realized the fox spirit had possessed the lady's body. Harming this body would surely kill the lady, but how to expel the spirit? He remembered village elders saying 9-tailed foxes cherish their fur most, unable to tolerate even a spark. So he turned and opened his bundle, taking out a bottle of phoenix wine. The fox spirit laughed, saying it wasn't a snake spirit and didn't fear realgar. But Wei Zitong smugly splashed the alcohol toward the fox spirit, then grabbed a nearby candlestick and threw it. The method worked. Seeing the flames appear, the spirit broke into a cold sweat. Suddenly, a red light emerged from behind it. The red light transformed into a fox, hiding behind the woman. At this moment, the body's owner awakened. The woman's name was Hong Xiang. Hui Zitong saw the fox and Hong Xiang's closeness, so he asked if she raised the fox. "Master Zhu, you don't know. My father is the master of Jixing Island. We islanders may not be skilled in much, but we excel at training spiritual beasts. At this point in the story, Yumerin was curious why Hong Xiong, being the fox's master, could be possessed. You asked him why. Yumerin said he didn't know either, blaming that writer for always keeping readers in suspense. But Wei Zitong was no longer the fool from his previous life. After investigating, he discovered that spiritual beasts from Jixing Island could never possess humans. There was only one truth. The fox had possessed its master. This maid was quite arrogant, even daring to steal her master's pastries. In the previous volume, Hong Xiong claimed the fox was just her trained spiritual beast, but Yumerin wondered how her own trained fox could possess her. Finally, she deduced there was only one truth. The fox had possessed its former master. This conclusion shocked Ruihui and Beibei, their eyes widening. Ruiqing exclaimed that Hong Xiong wasn't a good person after all, but Yumerin waved her hand, saying it was too hasty to call her evil. Actually, Hong Xiong's father was already powerless, and she controlled Jixing Island alone. But she was lonely and wanted a companion. Nine-tailed foxes excel at seduction, perfect for testing people's hearts. After many trials, only Wei Zitong truly passed the test. Unexpectedly, he discovered everything. At this point, the three maids were listening intently, urging her to continue. Wanting to know more, Yumerin asked with a mischievous smile. The maids all shouted they wanted to know, but Yumerin, being crafty, said she wouldn't tell them now, to be continued next time. This frustrated the maids greatly, who stops a story halfway. Not only that, Yumerin wanted to take the desserts from the table. Not finishing the story was one thing, but taking their pastries was too much. Wei was furious. She grabbed the desserts and left, calling other maids to clear the remaining pastries. Yumerin complained about the maid being stingy, not willing to share even one plate of desserts. As Ruiqing was about to remove the last plate of desserts, she quickly snatched the plate from Ruiqing's hands. "Thank you, sister. I won't disturb you anymore." With that, master and servant left with the plate, leaving you and Ruiqing exasperated. Sighing, you said having a foodie fan was quite troublesome. That evening, as you prepared for bed and dismissed the two maids, Ruiqing and Rui stood by your bed, reluctant to leave. You were puzzled about what they wanted. Ruihui excitedly asked, "Your Highness, what happened to Wei Zitong in the story? Didn't you dislike reading? Why are you interested now?" As a palace consort, you not only secretly wrote novels, but this fact was discovered. That night, just as you finished washing up for bed, you found two maids standing before you, showing no intention of leaving. You asked if they needed anything, but they kept hesitating, neither willing to speak first. Feeling awkward, you asked what they wanted to say. Ruihui finally stammered that they wanted to hear the rest of the novel. "Didn't you dislike reading? Why are you interested now?" Hearing this, both maids became embarrassed, saying it was Yumerin's fault for making the story so engaging. "Do you really want to know what happens next?" Hearing this, Ruihui and Ruiqing quickly jumped to your side, eagerly surrounding you. Seeing their earnest expressions, you felt it wouldn't hurt to reveal a little. Actually, the rest of the story wasn't special. After learning the truth, Hui Zitong and Hong Xiong fell in love and became inseparable. He pushed Hong Xiong onto the bed, and at that moment, the system notified him the task was complete, rewarding him with intimate contact. He wondered what intimate contact meant since he was already kissing her. His hands wandered over Hong Xiong's body, feeling aroused. However, just as he was about to act, a sharp pain shot through his lower abdomen. Looking down, he had gone soft. At that moment, the system sent a notification. The host had performed actions beyond the permitted range. Hearing this, both maids were confused, not understanding what kind of story this was. You explained it was called a rebirth system, and Hui Zitong had the unwakeable system. As the male protagonist, despite giving him many advantages, he still wanted to take shortcuts. Beautiful girls weren't so easily won over. So in your setting, he had to pass increasingly difficult trials to reach deeper levels of intimacy. The two maids listened with great interest. They found the plot both tragic and entertaining. Suddenly, someone clapped outside the door. Looking up, it was Yumerin. Your eyes widened instantly. You thought, this is bad. A woman entering your palace chamber in the middle of the night. Not only eavesdropping on your new novel at the door, but also bringing her bedding, planning to stay long-term. That night, just as you were about to rest, two maids stood before you, showing no intention of leaving. After much questioning, it turned out they wanted to hear the continuation of your novel, so you shared the plot developments with them. Unexpectedly, just as you finished, someone at the door applauded. Turning around, it was Yumerin. You were surprised she came at such a late hour. I wasn't eavesdropping intentionally. I just came to return the plate. Looking at their sparkling eyes, you felt speechless. Was such an expression necessary, just to return a plate? Even the Emperor didn't get such excitement. Suddenly, she rushed to your side, saying, "So sister is the famous writer. So far yet so close. Right before our eyes." After speaking, Yumarin darted out. You were at a loss, wondering what was happening and what she was up to. Shortly after, Yumarin returned carrying bedding. Your eyes nearly popped out. What was Yumarin planning, bringing bedding and all? She said she'd sleep here from now on to better supervise your writing. That wasn't all. Yumarin's maid complained about sleeping on the floor being too cold. She suggested removing your table to sleep there, near the window, for ventilation and a clear view of you. Hearing this, Yumarin agreed it wasn't enough and immediately took her bedding to the window. Watching these two, you were amazed at their audacity. But after thinking, you decided to let it be. Let her do what she wanted. You can read my novels early, but we must agree on 3 conditions. First, don't tell anyone I'm the famous writer. Second, when you read the books, you must resist spoiling them for others. Third, go back to your own quarters to sleep. You can't stay here. Yumarin's face fell, asking if you disliked her. You quickly waved your hands, explaining that wasn't what you meant. Then she threw herself into your arms, acting coy and begging you to let her stay. If you don't behave, I won't let you see the illustrated books. Who knew even the Emperor, ruler of the nation, loved gambling and couldn't use public funds, so he had to use other pretexts to transfer gambling money to others. Since Yumarin discovered you were the famous writer, you made 3 rules with her to keep it secret, and she couldn't sleep in your quarters. When told she couldn't sleep in your palace, she immediately clung to you, acting coy to be allowed to stay. Seeing her like this, you were speechless. You warned that if she didn't behave, she wouldn't get to read the novels. Hearing this, she quickly smiled and said she'd leave right away, even urging you to update soon. Suddenly, the Emperor's voice came from the door, asking what you were doing. Seeing the Emperor arrive, Yumarin quickly pulled away from you. While whistling and commenting on the weather, she left in just a few words. You sighed, thinking there's always a bigger fish. The Emperor asked if Yumarin was bullying you again. You awkwardly asked if you seemed that easy to bully. Previously, you were the one bullying others, but now things seem different. Moreover, you used to hate being touched, not even holding cats or dogs. Thinking of this, the Emperor mumbled that he hadn't even gotten to hug you yet. Hearing him muttering something, you quickly asked what he just said. "Nothing. I'm here to pay my gambling debt," he said. After speaking, he ordered the servants outside to bring in the items. Hearing the order, the eunuchs carried in 3 large boxes. Placed on the ground, 3 boxes full of gold gleamed brilliantly. You were so delighted your eyes sparkled, even forgetting to thank him. Then the Emperor suddenly said he couldn't just give gold away. Gambling was forbidden in the palace, as you knew. Hearing these words, you felt the air freeze instantly. Looking pitifully at the Emperor, you asked if these weren't just for appreciation. This delicate appearance would melt even the coldest heart. The Emperor quickly glanced at Sichuan beside him, telling him to announce the decree. Sichuan hurriedly opened and read the imperial decree. Hui Pin is virtuous and quiet, deeply moving. Awarded 100 taels of gold and a new title. As Emperor of all subjects, coming to your palace at night, just wanting a hug, and for this embrace, willing to award you 100 taels of gold. Actually, this all started from a bet between you two. The Emperor was curious why Wei Zitong in your book could remain unmoved despite the pain. You said it was because he was impotent. As a man, nothing was more offensive than being called impotent. He immediately denied it. So you two bet 100 taels of gold to see who was right. But he didn't know you were the author of the novel. So this bet was destined to be your win from the start. After the new book was released, the Emperor lost miserably, but a man of his word. He came to your palace tonight with 100 taels of gold. He even specially granted you a new title. Looking at the box of treasures, your heart was about to burst with joy. Just as you were about to accept the 3 boxes of gold, he said there was one more condition. You were puzzled at this point. What more could he want? The Emperor opened his arms expectantly, asking for a hug. You couldn't handle this and instinctively kicked him, just like how Consort Wei treated him in childhood. The Emperor was often bullied by Consort Wei then. After being hit, he would crouch down, crying pitifully, making other princes and princesses laugh at him. After they left, you saw him still crying, looking miserable. So you went over and patted his head, saying a big boy shouldn't cry so much. What kind of appearance was that? Hearing these words, the emperor cried even harder back then. You held him for a long time until he calmed down. Recalling that memory, the emperor felt very secure in your embrace now. It had been a long time since you held him like this. The feeling was as gentle as the embraces from childhood. If he hadn't just seen you Marin acting coy with you, these beautiful memories might have stayed buried forever. Looking at the emperor in your arms, as adorable as a child, you gently asked if something was troubling him. Your Majesty, please don't cry. The emperor looked up saying he wasn't crying. You were shocked. Then why was he shaking? My leg just fell asleep. The air froze again. This man undressed in broad daylight, completely improper. Just because he was the emperor's brother-in-law, he dared to be so arrogant inside and outside the palace. Recently, the emperor received daily complaints about your brother. The emperor found it embarrassing. How could someone worthy of being the nation's mother have such a brother? After reading the memorials, the emperor slammed the table and rose. It's Wei Pylon, truly disgraceful. The emperor originally wanted to strip his titles, but now considering your face, he let it go. However, he couldn't just let him off completely. At this time, Si Chuan suggested a plan. Why not have him come to the palace? As his sister, you could try to persuade your brother. Hearing this, the emperor thought it was the most effective solution currently, so he assigned Si Chuan to arrange it. Meanwhile, when you heard your brother was coming, you felt terrible. Why would he come to the palace? You couldn't just say he was the last person you wanted to see. Regarding this brother, your memories were confused. The former Empress Wei had framed her closest brother for Feng Nanji. Thinking about this drove you crazy. Empress Wei left such a mess. What could you do? The next morning, you waited early at the palace gates. After what felt like ages, your brother finally strolled over from afar. Upon seeing you, he sarcastically called out, "This humble servant greets the consort." Your jaw nearly dropped. His outfit was truly flamboyant. But thinking carefully, this was all your predecessor's fault. A good man ruined like this. Brother, it's been so long since that day. Do you really plan to waste your whole life like this? Hearing this, Wei Pylon's brows furrowed, his gaze turning sharp. He then said, "Sister, what nonsense are you talking about? Brother doesn't understand." Next moment he put his hand on your shoulder. But sister, wearing such gold and silver, it seems the emperor truly dotes on you. But then he started mocking how small your courtyard was, saying it couldn't compare to the previous one. Sister, you're useless. How did you lose the position of Empress? This was absolutely the worst brother in the world. Not only did he enter his sister's chambers disheveled, but he also tried to extort 3,000 taels of silver. Since your brother arrived at your palace, he either sarcastically commented on your jewelry or mocked your shabby courtyard and inability to keep the Empress position. You felt very frustrated. These consequences weren't even caused by you, but by this body's previous owner. Just as you were mentally cursing your brother 1,000 times, he suddenly asked to tour your small courtyard. Wasn't he just complaining about it? Now he wanted to see it. You angrily led him along. Unexpectedly, he continued his mockery after entering, saying your courtyard barely deserved 50 points. Not stopping there, he mentioned a new flower performer in town, suggesting you learn courtyard arrangement from him. As a palace consort, how could you learn from a mere actor? Ruichin immediately told him to mind his behavior. He wanted to continue, but you smiled and waved, asking them to prepare lunch first. In an hour, would brother like to stay for lunch? But he didn't listen to what you said, instead complaining that the maids in your courtyard were undisciplined. Not wanting to argue further, you quickly changed the subject, asking why he came. Well, the emperor asked me to come, so I came. Then he started mumbling to himself, cursing the court officials for meddling in trivial matters. You watched him talking to himself, not understanding what he was saying, feeling quite speechless. Seeing your exasperation, he quickly said with a grin that he just came to see you. Such an obvious lie even a child could see through. You stood up, threatening to leave if he wouldn't tell the truth. Wait. Actually, there is one small matter. He said he was short on money and wanted to borrow some silver from you. Thinking it might be a small amount, you considered giving it to repay the previous empress's debt, so you asked how much. Unexpectedly, this old fox immediately asked for 3,000 taels of silver. You nearly had a heart attack. Your novels had only earned a few thousand taels after selling for so long. This man was the brother of your body's previous owner. Not only did he come to your palace to mock and ridicule you, but he also demanded 3,000 taels of silver. And you gave him the money without complaint, only because he held your secret. Hearing his demand for so much silver, your jaw dropped. You tried explaining that the emperor's rewards were official property and couldn't be given away. Wei Pylon immediately responded sarcastically, "Sister, surely you can afford this small amount? Since you won't understand, you're really stubborn. Don't think I don't know about those novels you're writing." You were shocked. How did he know about your novel writing? Those illustrated books. Even the ladies at the Green Oasis house fight over them. You've made so much money, yet you cry poor? That's not right, sister. Finally, under pressure, you gave him the 3,000 taels. 3,000 taels. Your heart was bleeding. How many books would you need to sell to earn that much? Ruei-chin advised you not to give in to him anymore, saying once he got a taste, there would be a next time. You knew this, but felt helpless since he now knew about your novel writing. Then you suddenly realized something more urgent. Only a few people knew about your writing. So, who had leaked your secret to others? Ruei counted on her fingers. Herself, Ruei-chin, Sir Su, and you Marin and her servant. No one else. You ordered Ruei-chin and Ruei-hui to watch both inside and outside the palace to find who was leaking information. Several days later, the emperor sat on his bed, puzzled. Days ago, Master Yi suddenly came to the palace, seeking an audience. He said the renowned author sent a message through Su Galao. In a month, they would present a new book. The emperor was overjoyed and immediately asked if it was Mortal's Divine Ceremony 3. It was said to be an illustrated book with a completely new theme, but he didn't know what that meant. So the emperor had been restless these days, wondering what kind of illustrated book it would be. Looking at the many illustrated books beside him, he found them boring. They couldn't compare to even a toe of the renowned author. The emperor, with his 3,000 beauties in the harem, couldn't find a place to sleep that day. The reason was that all the palace consorts were having their monthly periods. It started when Master Yi from the bookstore visited the emperor, saying in a month the renowned author would present a new book. Could it be Mortal's Cultivation Part 3? But Master Yi said no. This time it was supposedly an illustrated book with a completely new theme, though he didn't understand what that meant. This puzzled the book-starved emperor. What kind of illustrated book could it be? He hadn't bathed for a long time. Looking at the drawing board beside him, he found it boring, not even comparable to the mouse in Ask Ming Xiaoyu. Thinking of this, he felt inexplicably troubled, so he called Si Chuan to prepare to go out. Hearing the summons, Si Chuan rushed in and asked where the emperor wanted to go. He winked suggestively, hinting if the emperor wanted to visit you. Remembering what happened last time at your place, it was too embarrassing. No, not there. This stumped Si Chuan. Then where? The emperor suggested visiting Wang Guiping. Si Chuan was extremely embarrassed. Wang Guiping was having her period these days and couldn't receive the emperor. Then let's go to Cui Xinshi's place. Si Chuan said she was also having her period. Seeing everyone was having their period, the emperor decided to visit Wei Jiaoyi instead. But Si Chuan still looked awkward. He was puzzled. What was going on? Was the entire harem having their period? He explained that Wei Jiaoyi had just caught a cold, not having her period. The emperor was furious upon hearing this. Wei Jiaoyi comes from a military family. She's even stronger than me. But when the emperor and Si Chuan entered her chambers, they found Wei Jiaoyi coughing. Looking at her condition, she seemed genuinely ill, not faking it. The emperor was curious about how such a strong consort could fall ill. It's all because I was too obsessed with Wei Zitong's works. I sat in a draft with wet hair the other day while reading. As a fellow fan, the emperor's anger instantly turned to understanding, telling her to rest well. For the sake of following a novel, it was the first time the consorts collectively refused to serve the emperor. Some even deliberately caught colds to avoid his visits. That day, the emperor was in high spirits and wanted to visit the harem, but found several consorts were unavailable. Just as he was about to visit Wei Jiaoyi, Si Chuan informed him she was sick. This angered the emperor. Wei Jiaoyi was from a military family and had never been sick before. But when they arrived, they found she was indeed ill, and it was because she had been reading Mortal's Cultivation. Hearing this, the emperor, being a fellow fan, understood and quietly left. But as soon as the emperor left, Wei Jiaoyi asked her maid to bring her the illustrated books. I worked hard to catch this cold. Now that I don't have to serve, I must make the most of this time to read. Her maid's face turned pale hearing this, so it was deliberate all along. Meanwhile, the emperor, rejected everywhere, was troubled. As the ruler of the nation, he couldn't even find a place to sleep. Si Chuan awkwardly mentioned that Zhao Pin was still well. Mentioning Zhao Pin reminded the emperor of that embarrassing night. But with the entire harem unavailable, he had no choice but to visit. You, however, had no worries and were happily eating braised pork with Umarin. She said your manuscript was well written, just that your handwriting was ugly. Did you tell anyone about my ugly handwriting? You asked with a smile. Umarin said of course not, as she had promised to keep your secret. Hearing this reassured you. The leak hadn't come from her. Suddenly, there was an announcement outside. The emperor arrives. This startled both of you. Umarin, seeing the emperor approaching, darted away. She called back, saying she was taking the braised pork and would return the plate later. You suddenly remembered something and shouted that you'd left the new manuscript on the courtyard bench. But Umarin ran as fast as a rabbit and couldn't hear you. You felt uneasy. This beauty not only loved braised pork, but was also a bit hard of hearing. That day, you were eating braised pork with Umarin, discussing your newly written novel. Suddenly, there was an announcement outside. The emperor arrives. Umarin darted away. You told her about the new manuscript on the bench outside, but she didn't hear. You felt worried. It would be terrible if the emperor saw it. By the time you reached the courtyard, you saw the emperor reaching for your manuscript. Since he had already seen it, you knew you had to find another way to handle this. You quickly ordered someone to bring the spicy duck tongues from the kitchen. When you turned back, you found the emperor already holding the manuscript, reading it carefully. Your face paled. In just 2 or 3 seconds, he had already started reading. You laughed nervously and asked why he came to your small courtyard at this time. Already frustrated from being turned away elsewhere, the emperor asked if he wasn't welcome here either. Sensing his bad mood, you quickly smiled and said you had just finished dinner. The emperor, not wanting to trouble you further, asked if this manuscript was yours. In your mind, you thought sarcastically, who else's could it be in my courtyard? But outwardly, you answered respectfully, saying it looked like mortal's cultivation. I went through such trouble to borrow it for 3 days at a high price. To read it more times, I had to copy it by hand. The emperor was confused. He hadn't seen these plot points before, yet he should have been the first to receive the illustrated book. You were sweating profusely and reluctantly said you found the author's updates too slow, so you made up some parts. Hearing this, the emperor's eyes lit up. He grabbed your hand saying, "Beloved consort, you love reading. This brings me great joy." Just as you were having this intimate moment, Ruehue entered with the duck tongues, breaking the mood. Seeing the food arrive, you quickly changed the subject, inviting the emperor to taste the dish. Just because you made one dish, the emperor was so moved he wanted to play cards with you. It wasn't because the dish was particularly good, but because you never cooked before. When Ruehue brought the duck tongues, the emperor was surprised, having never seen them before. You introduced it as spicy duck tongues, smiling while saying you cooked it yourself. Hearing this, the emperor wondered if his ears were deceiving him. So you firmly stated again that you indeed made it yourself. As soon as you spoke, you noticed the emperor's face suddenly darkened. Eugene, that's what I called you before you married me. I just hope you haven't forgotten you're the Wei family's eldest daughter. This sudden turn left you blank-minded, not understanding why he said this. You never ate duck tongues before. You wouldn't touch any internal organs. They never appeared on your table. Let alone cooking yourself. You couldn't stand kitchen smoke. Once, when a cook had the smell of oil smoke, it made you sick for an entire day. Hearing this, you couldn't help but think this consort must have been a Narcissus spirit. Eugene, when I married you, I never wanted you to suffer like this. You felt awkward, saying he was taking it too seriously. He didn't know this body no longer housed his beloved. With your majesty here, I don't suffer at all. Hearing these words, the emperor was suddenly overwhelmed with emotion. The next moment, he picked you up by the waist. When you asked what he was doing, he only answered sleep. The emperor's sudden desire caught everyone off guard. Only 3 servants remained in the courtyard, standing dumbfounded. In no time, the emperor had removed his clothes and pressed you beneath him. This act of love lasted until the next day, when Ruehue came to call you for lunch. You opened your tired eyes. Despite sleeping until noon the next day, your body still felt exhausted. Seeing the empty space beside you, you asked Ruehue where the emperor had gone. His Majesty left early this morning, instructing us servants not to disturb you. You struggled to get up, suddenly trembling in pain. Seeing your painful state, Ruehue was terrified and quickly asked what was wrong. Just because you personally made one dish. It moved the emperor to tenderness. He carried you to the bedchamber and played cards. Since Empress Wei never cooked before, seeing you personally prepare food for him, a warm sunlight instantly filled his heart. After a night of passion, it was now noon the next day, with Rue calling you for lunch. But when you tried to get up, your whole body felt broken with pain. Seeing you in such a state, she gaped in shock and hurriedly asked what was wrong. You hadn't expected your first time to be so uncomfortable. Your whole body ached, and even your voice was hoarse. But remembering last night's shy activities, you couldn't help but savor the memory. You had to admit, the Emperor's physique was excellent. It would be top tier even in modern times. And not just that, he was also excellent in that particular aspect. Thinking about this, you smiled unconsciously. Seeing you crying one moment and smiling the next, Beiwei worried you might have gone mad. But you just said you discovered some truths and wanted to reassess your future life. Hearing this, Rue was even more confused, not understanding what you meant. As a modern person, you used to be very opposed to the imperial harem system. However, the current emperor wasn't what you had imagined. First, he wasn't lustful, and he spent most of his harem visits with you. Second, such a man was pleasing to look at day and night. He met your standards in every way. Lost in thought, Rue, who was helping you dress, suddenly screamed. You turned to ask what was wrong, and she tremblingly said there was something on your back. You were confused about what could be on your back, and noticed how her ears were red as strawberries. Soon you shrieked in realization. Your back was covered in love marks. A few days later, Rue had gathered information from outside the palace. She said she had mostly figured things out and brought someone back, asking if you wanted to see them. More than seeing anyone, you urgently wanted to know who had leaked your identity. Guru said the problem likely stemmed from your manuscript. Your secret novel writing had been exposed without reason, and your brother had used it to extort 2 silver pieces for 3 days. Yet after all the searching, the biggest culprit turned out to be yourself. How could this be? Could you have split into 2? According to Rue, the problem source was indeed your manuscript. A new copyist at the bookstore, unfamiliar with the rules, let your brother see your manuscript. She said your brother might have recognized your handwriting. You suddenly understood before he hadn't known for certain you were Wei Ming. Xiao Yang's previous words were just to verify his suspicions. In an instant, you realized you were the culprit. You'd forgotten that people of this era could recognize someone by their handwriting. Meanwhile, Wang Guiping was complaining to the guard that the emperor hadn't summoned him for days. Don't fear the city's schemes. Fear the green tea's skills, his suffering. What man wouldn't be moved? Even the guard felt sorry for him. He quickly said he had something to report about you. Thinking about how his recent loss of favor was because of you, he perked up and eagerly asked what it was. The guard said he saw you meeting with outsiders tonight, claiming they were servants from your maiden home. Hearing this, Wang Guiping also felt something was wrong. You had long cut ties with your maiden family. Why would you suddenly interact with them? As he pondered, he knelt down again and brought out green tea to beg for help. Crying, he said he was just a consort with no power, begging the guard to help him. Remembering when he first entered the palace, he had cried like this too, saying he didn't want to be a consort. Unable to help him then, this time he was determined to help. He quickly agreed to help Wang Guiping, promising not to disappoint him this time. Your new book, Cat Brothers' Daily Life, sold out immediately upon release. But some said you would soon fade away, as there had been no discussion in taverns and tea houses for half a month. Others disagreed, citing the success of your previous work, Mortal's Path to Immortality. This upset the critic, who wanted to prove his point. This was your first time asking the emperor for rewards. In the harem, only you were bold enough to ask for things. But you didn't want gold or silver, just some old metal items. All because these were meant to deal with your debt-collecting brother. Your new book, Cat Brothers' Daily Life, was once again beloved by the common people. Su Galao praised you, though your share could only be exchanged for banknotes through Baiguai. He never expected you to write about trivial matters in diary form. Even his mischievous granddaughter had become well-behaved because of reading your book. Similarly, your brother Wei Peeling saw your new illustrated version. He was surprised to find it contained daily stories of him and his sister from childhood. So he immediately had his servant send a visiting card to the palace. In the palace, because you had served well last time, the emperor wanted to reward you. Hearing this, you quickly asked Rue to bring paper, to make a list. This shocked Rue, as you had never actively asked the emperor for things before. But you told her they weren't anything special, just needed to inform the emperor quickly. Indeed, your requests were quite odd, all common items. Even Si Quan was puzzled. The palace had plenty of rare items, but common ones were hard to find. The emperor smiled, wondering what you were planning, but he still ordered Si Quan to send people out to get them. to gather all these items properly. Later we'll go see what tricks they're planning. A few days later, your requested items were delivered to the palace. While chatting with eunuch Si Quan, you glimpsed a familiar shadow outside the door. Just as you tried to look closer, the shadow suddenly whooshed away into hiding. You couldn't help but marvel at how the Emperor had such a peculiar style, acting like a child. The Emperor was relieved you hadn't spotted him. But when he turned his head, he saw your terrifying gaze staring right at him, nearly frightening his soul out of his body. The Emperor's face instantly turned as red as a monkey's bottom. As the ruler of 10,000 people, he was now climbing walls to eavesdrop like a child. More amusing was that you had caught him. Being discovered startled him, his face turning red as a monkey's bottom. He quickly turned to hide, but you had already spotted him. What to do now? He thought, since he'd been discovered, not coming out would seem rather awkward, so he pretended to cough a few times and walked out. You watched as he finally showed himself, so you smiled and asked what he was doing here. Unexpectedly, the Emperor asked about those shabby items you requested. Of course, it's to create the illusion that I'm penniless, you said. This confused the Emperor. Who is this illusion for? You answered it was for the debt collector, but the Emperor wouldn't stop questioning. He then asked who the debt collector was. Fearing his endless questions, you quickly invited him inside, saying you had prepared something good. After entering, the Emperor discovered what you had prepared. You laughed, saying today's might taste better, while thinking to yourself that if the Emperor hadn't come, you wouldn't even get to eat this meal. Then you picked up some food for his bowl. This terrified Si Quan, as it was forbidden for anyone to personally cook for the Emperor in the palace. But the next moment, he was even more shocked, because the Emperor ate your food. Not only that, he even moved your favorite dish in front of you. You smiled and thanked His Majesty for the favor. But the Emperor suddenly asked again who the debt collector was. You just laughed it off, avoiding the question. Seeing you unwilling to answer, the Emperor became slightly annoyed, surprised that you now had your own secrets. After the meal, Little C called out that Doge had been delivered. You were confused. He asked what this was for. It's cool here, I quite like it. Of course, to wear it here, at beloved consort's place. Your face immediately turned pale, as your brother would soon enter the palace. You had to find a way to get the Emperor to leave. Then Ruehue rushed in hurriedly, saying, your brother would arrive in half a cup of tea's time. The mighty Emperor of the nation was wrapped up like a dumpling, and by his own consort no less. Not only that, he was eavesdropping by the window. All this because your brother had arrived at the palace early, and would be here in half a cup of tea's time. You were scared to death. If he saw the Emperor here, it would ruin your plan of pretending to be poor. After all, who would believe an Emperor's favored consort would be poor? Enemy troops would arrive in 30 seconds. With no time left, you grabbed the Emperor's hand, dragging him into your bedroom. After a while, you clapped your hands, satisfied with your work. Now he wouldn't run around exposing himself. The Emperor, being treated like this for the first time, cursed angrily. He couldn't understand why a mighty Emperor should. Shortly after, Si Quan ran in and was terrified seeing the Emperor in this state. The Emperor quickly asked him to help remove the bindings, feeling like some mistress. After being freed, the Emperor was very angry, not understanding what you were trying to do. Si Quan was about to investigate, but he waved it off, saying he'd soon see the truth himself. Suddenly, he glimpsed Wei Pailan's figure outside the window. Wondering what he was here for, the Emperor immediately crouched by the window, waiting to see what would unfold. As soon as your brother walked in, he saw your shabby furniture and your extremely poor-looking clothes. Even your shoes were the same embroidered ones from when you first entered the palace. Wei Pailan sighed, wondering how your life had become so different from last time. Ruehue calculated how much money they had from selling all the gold, silver, and everything else they could sell. Ruehue said there was less than 3,000 taels of silver. You sighed, wondering why it was so little. Why don't we sell the vases and paintings that His Majesty gifted? My lady, we can't. Selling imperial items is punishable by death. Wei Pailan finally understood you were raising money, but he asked, weren't your novels selling well? To think a palace consort could be short of money. Not only were all the palace items worn out, even your debt-collecting brother felt embarrassed to stay. Little did he know this was all your scheme. That day, as soon as Wei Pailan arrived at your quarters, he saw poverty everywhere. Then he heard you discussing with Ruehue about selling things for money. He was puzzled since your novels were selling well. How could you be short of money? As if hearing his thoughts, you immediately asked Ruehue how much your books had made. Ruehue said there was about 1,000 taels income, but after deducting printing and labor costs, only about 600 taels remained. Hearing this, Wei Pylon and you both gasped in shock. Seeing your dejected look, Ruehue quickly consoled you, saying 600 taels was several times the annual income of an ordinary family. Shueqin also spoke up, saying as a palace consort, you shouldn't need to work so hard, staying up late writing novels. At this point, Wei Pylon couldn't listen anymore and quickly asked who had bullied you. You feigned surprise, asking how he got here, acting as if he shouldn't have heard about your difficult life. But within moments, he returned to his carefree self, saying if it wasn't bullying, perhaps you were trying to buy back the position of Empress? You quickly hid the account book behind you, asking why he came so early. Shouldn't he come at dinner time? But your sharp-eyed brother wouldn't miss any of your movements. He immediately noticed you were hiding something, so he quickly reached out to touch your cheek, saying, "My dear sister, are you hiding something from brother?" You stammered, saying you never hide anything from him. Suddenly, he leaned in suspiciously and snatched the account book from behind you. You panicked, scrambling with Ruehue and Ruehue for the book. But unfortunately, none of you three had the height advantage over Wei Pylon. Finally, he accidentally saw the contents of the account book. Sister painstakingly selling all possessions, just to help brother pay off millions in gambling debts. Who knew brother wouldn't appreciate it, saying he'd rather starve than accept help. But fortunately, you were just acting. After Wei Pylon grabbed your account book, he finally saw its contents clearly. Line by line, they were all the debts he'd accumulated over the years. You tearfully told him that selling everything still wasn't enough to pay his debts. But Wei Pylon tossed the book aside, saying contemptuously it wasn't your business. You live your good life in the palace. Even if I'm beaten to death outside, it won't affect you. But you said you became like this all for him. He might not see you as a sister, but you always cared for him. This performance left him completely confused, not knowing what to say. But your act wasn't finished. You continued saying how regretful you were about past mistakes. You were truly sorry, begging him not to hate you forever for one mistake, brother. I'm no longer the Empress. Too many people in the palace want to see me in misery. I don't want brother to waste all his life's possibilities because of me. You are such an excellent person. Hearing your sincere remorse, Wei Pylon couldn't bear to trouble you anymore. He shook off your hand, walked to the door, punched the doorframe, and left. Finally, dealing with this tough case, you found your tears wouldn't stop flowing. You wondered what was happening to yourself, why your heart suddenly hurt so much, and why you couldn't control yourself. Suddenly, a hand touched your forehead. Looking up, it was Empress Wei. She said thank you to you and disappeared. So it was her grief all along. Does this mean this body now truly belongs to you? Thinking back, you had worked so hard to build a career in modern times. Now you're forced to take over this mess and start over. Who would care about your feelings? With these thoughts, you started crying again. This emperor who's always threatening to behead people just because you were crying so miserably. Unexpectedly, you even asked him for money, saying you couldn't even afford food anymore. After crying and sobbing, you finally managed to send that troublesome brother away. But unexpectedly, you couldn't stop crying. It turned out all this was because of Empress Wei's influence in this body. Her matters were resolved. But why should you inherit such a mess? Thinking of this, you began sobbing loudly. Seeing this, the emperor didn't know what you two had discussed to make you cry so sadly. Should I have him beheaded for you? He's your own brother. How dare he? Just stop crying. It pains my heart to see you cry. Hearing this, you were stunned. The emperor actually cared about you? The emperor became embarrassed at your reaction, stammering that you were his woman, so of course he cared. This made your eyes well up again. So in this world, the emperor cared for you. So the next moment, you quickly grabbed his hand, saying you were almost out of money. This completely confused the emperor. In all his life, no one had ever directly asked him for money, but you held on to his words, saying as his woman, he should provide for you. Sichuan listened nervously from the side. The emperor's mind was hard to read. Were you pushing your luck towards another exile to the cold palace? Unexpectedly, the emperor told you to take directly from his private treasury. He even said it was fine if you took a little. The servants were shocked. Wasn't this completely contradicting himself? After Wei Pylon left your palace, he unexpectedly went straight to the gambling house. His drinking buddies were overjoyed. Some even sarcastically remarked how nice it must be to have a sister. These words struck Wei Pylon's heart, and his face immediately darkened. He snatched the money from their hands, wondering how they could say such things. He said this money was for paying off gambling debts. But in an instant, he returned to his playboy persona, saying the remaining money was enough for everyone to have fun. This man had just received money from his sister, and immediately went to the brothel to gamble and carouse, completely forgetting how pitiful he looked when borrowing money from his sister. After leaving your palace, Wei Pylon headed straight to the brothel without hesitation. He even read your new book there, but the plot seemed somewhat familiar. Tomorrow was the Mid-Autumn Festival, and the little princess was especially excited. But she was also worried because she didn't have enough money to buy her brother a gift. But such a small matter, how could it trouble such a lovely and clever little princess? Reading this, Wei Pylon also remembered. She had some memories of that Mid-Autumn Festival. The third princess in the palace had always liked the little princess's pony, but she hadn't been willing to give it away before. Now she had made a deal with the princess, the white pony, in exchange for helping her buy what she wanted most. She chose a set of Scholars 4 treasures for her brother, thinking he loved reading so much. He would surely love it. On Mid-Autumn Festival, her brother was indeed very happy, praising the little princess for her thoughtfulness. He smiled and said he had also prepared a gift for the little princess. This made her so happy that she would also receive a gift. When the gift was presented, it turned out to be a horse whip. The white pony had already been given to the third princess, so what use was this now? Thinking of this, the little princess burst into tears. Her brother was confused about why his little sister suddenly started crying, and he panicked, not knowing what to do. Seeing this, Wei Pylon laughed and muttered, so that's what happened. Back then, he didn't know why his sister cried and couldn't console her. He never knew this was the reason. Thinking of you as a child, you were genuinely good to him as a brother, even selling your beloved pony to buy him a gift. But people's hearts eventually change, and his sister changed too in the end. Thinking of these sad memories, he reached for wine, but a hand blocked his way. Looking up, he saw a woman had appeared beside him at some point. The beauty raised her cup and said coquettishly, "Young master." But Wei Pylon directly stated he never drinks wine offered by women of mediocre appearance. Gambling was always forbidden in the palace. But these women not only didn't listen, they even contentedly continued. Especially you. When Ruehue Kingshi rushed in saying he had something to report, you didn't want to listen at all, only focused on the cards in front of you. Only when he mentioned the emperor was coming did you wake up, completely frightened. When the emperor entered, he found you all holding hands, not knowing what you were doing. You had to nervously explain that you were discussing what to give him for his birthday. When the emperor mentioned his birthday was still a month away, fortunately, Wei Jiaoi came to save the situation, saying a month wasn't too long. Hearing this, the emperor got excited and asked what gifts you all had prepared. The three beauties beside you all shared their ideas, but you alone knew nothing. Seeing you hesitate to speak, the emperor immediately seized the chance to ask what you had prepared. Like being called on in class, your mind went blank, not knowing what to say. The emperor immediately saw you weren't prepared, and his brow furrowed. You awkwardly said you invited them over today to help you come up with ideas. But knowing you, the emperor didn't believe such nonsense. His expression darkened, and he ordered the other consorts to leave. Since Xiaoping can't think of anything, I'll help personally. Hearing this, the consorts giggled and hurried out, leaving you alone in embarrassment. When only you two remained, he asked if you hadn't thought of anything or simply hadn't tried. You panicked because you really knew nothing. Fortunately, the former Empress way was also useless. Seeing you like this, the emperor sighed helplessly, wondering how you ever became empress when you couldn't do anything. You looked at the emperor lovingly and said, "Because your majesty liked me then." Hearing such a cheesy line from you for the first time, the emperor was instantly speechless. "I'd like you back then. When I first married you, I wanted to spend a lifetime together." Before he could finish speaking, you interrupted him, quickly saying no. What Empress Wei did later would only spoil the mood. A scoundrel with no money, still visiting brothels. Not only relying on women for entrance tickets, but also trying to get a free dinner. That wasn't enough. When he ran out of money, he still wanted to buy things. This Pylon was truly shameless, even reaching out to Miss Hirong for money. The lady was quite speechless. It was her first time seeing a customer asking a courtesan for money. Not only that, he even acted like a big shot, asking her to prepare some pastries and containers immediately. She quickly sent a servant to tell Wang Huiping that she probably couldn't complete the plan. In the Garden Palace, when Wang Guiping received the news, she flew into a rage, smashing bowls and plates. It was bad enough the plan failed, but lately Xiaoping had been so careful that she couldn't find any fault. The maid quickly said that the accounts they investigated showed Xiaoping didn't have enough money to give to her brother. Hearing this, she immediately perked up and asked how much was missing. The maid replied it was short by 600 taels of silver. Mind you, a fine house in the city only cost 200 taels, and her monthly allowance was just 2 or 3 taels. She wasn't close with her family, and no one in the palace would lend her money. That left only one possibility. It was the emperor's money. Maid Lianhua thought consort Wang was clever, since the emperor's gifts were worth quite a sum. She ordered servants to investigate immediately, to report everything happening in Xiaoping Palace. She smiled coldly, saying selling imperial gifts was a capital offense. Not even the gods could save her then. Meanwhile, on your side, Ruiqin discovered someone was investigating your accounts. She immediately reported this to you, saying the person was too powerful to trace. Angrily throwing down your brush, you said you'd done nothing wrong. Then Ruihui reminded you about the large sum you gave your brother earlier. Now you had to be careful. It would be one thing if they came after you, but it would be terrible if they involved your brother. Ruiqing then mentioned there were many unfamiliar eunuchs and maids around lately. Ruihui said if they could identify these eunuchs and maids, the palace would know. But you felt it wouldn't be that simple. If someone wanted to cause trouble, they wouldn't be so obvious. Since childhood, you never knew you had this skill. That is, telling stories that put people to sleep. And this time, you actually lulled the emperor to sleep. Not only that, while the emperor slept, you did something sneaky. That day, you invited the emperor to the courtyard, saying you'd thought of a birthday gift. The emperor was overjoyed that you'd thought of something so quickly and urged you to tell him. You giggled and said your talent was storytelling. So you pulled the emperor aside and began your magical hypnosis. Soon he fell asleep, and no amount of calling could wake him. Si Chuan joked that with your storytelling skills, he had to fight hard not to fall asleep. Surprisingly, you weren't upset at all, but happily said, "Oh." Moreover, the next second you reached for the emperor's pocket, giving Si Chuan quite a fright. You were seen quietly putting the jade the emperor had given you into his pocket. Si Chuan was puzzled, not knowing what you were thinking. You just asked him to keep it secret and not tell the emperor yet. This jade was a tribute item, the only piece of its kind in the world. Why return what the emperor gave you? You said you were just leaving it with the emperor temporarily, and would ask for it back once you had prepared your gift. Si Chuan didn't understand what kind of game this was, only saying it would be just this once. You thanked him with a smile, but this was just a front. Your real purpose was to use this incident to draw out whoever was causing trouble behind the scenes. You ordered Ruihui and Huaxia to spread news that you had lost the jade given by the emperor. They were to do it discreetly, only pretending to search in secret and absolutely not let the emperor know. Then you instructed Ruiqin that next time she left the palace, she should ignore anyone following her and visit the city's largest pawn shop. Your subordinates didn't understand why you weren't confronting the troublemaker directly. You said they were too young, that you had already cast the bait, and soon enough, the person would take the bait. Several days later, there was indeed movement in the Huayan Palace. Seeing Guy's delighted expression, Wang Guiping knew there was good news. This ancient schemer was utterly shocked, not sleeping late at night, making a mess of the courtyard. Moreover, claiming to have nightmares and needing the emperor's company. Guy rushed in excitedly, saying she knew how Xiaoping had obtained the silver. When Wang Guiping heard that she had pawned the emperor's jade gift, she immediately sat up in bed, startled. Not believing it was true, she quickly asked again. Guy said these past few days, Xiaoping's people had been secretly searching for the jade, but she believed it had clearly been sold. Wang Guiping laughed upon hearing this. That detestable Xiaoping had finally slipped up. She declared if she could send her to the cold palace once, she could do it again. Then she ordered someone to find the emperor for an audience. That evening, when the emperor arrived at the garden palace, just as after he entered, he saw Wang Guiping covering her face. The emperor was bewildered, not knowing why she was crying. Unexpectedly, she fell to her knees upon seeing him, claiming she was guilty. Sobbing, she said many consorts' palaces have been burglarized, and she, responsible for managing the 6 palaces, couldn't even prevent a thief. The emperor couldn't believe there was a thief in the inner palace. Wang Guiping cried, saying she didn't believe it at first either, but then heard Xiaoping's palace had also lost something. That confirmed it. Hearing even Xiaoping's palace had been robbed, the emperor became anxious. What did she lose? Seeing the emperor's strong reaction, she said she wasn't sure, probably some missing items. Hearing this, the emperor urgently wanted to investigate. Seeing his reaction, she quickly called out. She said she had already sent for Xiaoping. Soon you arrived at Huayin Palace. Seeing your composed demeanor, Wang Guiping thought you wouldn't believe until you saw the coffin. Then, the guards brought in the alleged thief. Wang Guiping immediately scolded him to produce what he had stolen from Xiaoping. The thief immediately protested, shouting he had never stolen anything from Xiaoping. Wang Guiping was confused. Xiaoping had clearly lost something. Could there be another thief? This schemer was quite the actress, not only directing her own play about palace thieves, but also falsely accusing you of selling imperial gifts. After being caught, the thief quickly swore he had never stolen from Xiaoping. Wang Guiping pondered, wondering if there could be other thieves in the palace. Watching her poor acting, you found it amusing and suggested she should perform at the southern court instead. Only a few confidants knew about the lost items in your palace. So how did he find out? The situation suddenly reversed. Wang Guiping instantly broke into a cold sweat. She quickly knelt before the emperor, saying she didn't mean to deceive him. She insisted there was indeed a thief in the palace, but it wasn't someone else. It was you. She pointed at you, saying you were crying thief to catch a thief. She set this up fearing you wouldn't confess. At this point, Wang Guiping demanded to know what you had done with the jade the emperor had bestowed. But you just casually played with your hair, asking how it was any of her business. Seeing you wouldn't confess, Wang Guiping quickly said, you usually use your own money to support your brother, but now you must have sold the imperial gift. Selling imperial gifts? I don't know what sister you is talking about. She fiercely shouted at you, asking where the emperor's jade went. I said I can't find it. Perhaps I forgot where I put it. So in the end, you were placed under house arrest in the palace. Though it was called house arrest, the emperor didn't post guards at your door. You could leave any time. But these past few days, you hadn't even stepped out of your room, let alone the courtyard. After all, you were waiting to watch a good show. When the emperor heard this news, he was surprised at how patient you were being. Usually when he punished you, you would always come to him to throw tantrums. Sichuan joked that if the emperor was so eager for her to come find him, why put her under house arrest? She lost the jade I gave her. What's wrong with giving her a light punishment? Hearing this, Sichuan suddenly remembered something. Then he excitedly told the emperor he knew where the jade was. It was on the emperor himself. Hearing this, the emperor was greatly shocked.